One of the biggest work that moms of elementary school kids can do is teaching their children's hearts, their attitudes. So, as homeschool moms, we can really exhort our children to engage. But if you can get to the heart behind it, if you can get them to engage and to love the right things, then you're going to have it made. High school is much easier because they know how to engage themselves. They don't need you to make them do something.
Hi, welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschool journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. And if this podcast has been encouraging to you, please leave us a good review. Each review really does help. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Today, I'm excited to introduce to you Jennifer Lont. Jennifer is a classroom teacher turned homeschool mom. She has two boys who just recently earned their black belts in karate, and she has been teaching them at home for 14 years. Jennifer is a Homeworks by Precept consultant and loves encouraging moms and dads in their homeschooling journeys, helping them instill a love for learning in their children while demonstrating the importance of good habits and self-discipline. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Well, tell us a little bit about your family, how long you've been homeschooling, and how you got started in homeschooling.
Sure. I've been homeschooling for 14 years now. I was a classroom teacher, so I thought I would be sending my kids to school. That's just what I grew up with, and so it was what I was familiar with. I went to a public school myself, and then I taught in a Christian school. So whenever he asked me to homeschool, I thought, wait, what is this now? What do you want me to do? And the only homeschoolers that I knew were a little bit odd, but I've since learned that it's just the parents that make the child the way they are. You've got some odd ducks in public school and in Christian school and in homeschool. So anyways, I was teaching my son all the things you teach them whenever they're preschoolers, and he just kept asking me questions. We'd go to the grocery store and he'd be like, "What's that ugly vegetable?" And he wanted to learn. So we just naturally fell into it. It was easy to start. And then whenever I had to teach him to read, I had such resources. I used to teach 5th grade, and I had never taught a child to read before. Well, I just opened up the books and they're telling me exactly what to do, and off we went. So we just never stopped. And it's
So,
been
all right, so
14 years.
what was the change point in you when your husband mentioned it to you, and this was a new journey for you? What How did you decide to finally jump on the homeschool bus?
I think sometimes whenever there's something new, there's always some fear wrapped up in it. You just It's unfamiliar, and so you just kind of hold back, and you're not really sure how it's gonna go because you can't envision it yourself. So I think just as I went and as he grew and as we did it, I gained confidence that I didn't have before. And even though I was a teacher, I still struggled in the beginning, like, "How do we do this?" Um,
Well, I've had some of my friends who were teachers that said they felt like in some ways their schoolroom experience was a hindrance because they were used to teaching 30, but not one, and tutoring can be so different than classroom management.
Yeah, and I think I had to, I mean, I definitely learned things as a teacher and in the classroom, but I've learned more since I've taught at home. And, I had to rethink why we do the things we do. Like, for example, with grades, um, y kids naturally, whenever they miss something, they get very upset about it and, "Oh, no, it's not perfect," and I looked in my own heart and thought, "You know what? That's the way I've always operated. I just wanted to get the A. I just wanted to look good in front of other people." Um, but that's really not what we're going for here. So as I thought through, I'm seeing my boys' reactions, and I'm looking in my own heart, and I'm seeing this is just not the way we want to operate. I would tell them, let's say you've got a child who has a disability and they do the best that they can do and they get a C. Am I going to be proud of them? Well, yeah, mom. But let's say that you're getting an A and you haven't worked at all for it and you haven't been studying. Do you think I'm going to be proud of you? And then they're like, "Oh, I don't know. What I want from you is to work faithfully every day. That's all I want from you." And once we kind of switch that mindset, the A's follow often, not
It's
always.
funny. One of our board members, one of our former board members in our homeschooling association is a doctor. And he would always say to me, he said, "Zan, you know, grades are really for the parent to know what the child has been doing in the classroom.
Yeah,
But then when you're home, the parent knows what the child is doing in the classroom." And
exactly.
but the thing he said to me that meant the most is God didn't make everybody to be an A student.
Yeah.
But in the homeschooling environment, we can just change the platform a little bit to mastery and, like you say, our kids given the best effort.
Mhm.
And it really does change the dynamics of things.
It does. It's so similar. Sometimes people can't see the difference, but it's not about it. The A is just the measurement. It's like measuring your height at the doctor's office. When you get to the doctor, it's not going to change anything no matter how hard you stretch.
Yeah.
So when it's test time, the test itself doesn't really matter. It's the work that you do every day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, tell me one of your favorite aspects of homeschooling.
Um, my favorite part is just the time that I get to spend with my kids. I get to raise my own children. I'm not sending them to someone else. I get to invest in them. I know exactly what they act like every day, a lot of what they think like because they display that. I can see what they need academically, spiritually, socially, all of those ways. So I get to be the one that can know my children well and then help them.
That's exciting. Well, one of the things tell us about your boys a little bit. You have 2 boys, one's in college, one's
Yes.
a junior in high school,
Yes.
and, tell us what was your deciding factor into continuing to homeschool through high school? Because that's sort of a watermark decision for a lot of people.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions going into it, like, "Are you going to homeschool high school?" And I said, "Well, we'll see when we get there," and we just kept going, and just like before when we started, there was something new about starting homeschooling. As we went, we just continued to gain confidence as we went, and there was no reason not to. I mean, the high school years are whenever you get to really apply all the things that they've been learning, all these skills start coming together, and so,
And you enjoy them so much as people when they're in high
yes,
school.
yes,
They just like her. I mean, I know there's all this controversy about, when you're the parent, you're not the friend. But that fellowship with your teenagers can be so special after the 8 years you've laid down
yeah.
just the tracks for everything.
It is, and homeschooled kids who really love homeschooling, um, they can they can be with their little friends and their mom's friends, and, like, we're all just one big happy group, and they're
Yeah.
not trying to get off on their own, get away from us, and get a car so they can leave home. We want to be together, we enjoy each other.
Yeah, that is really exciting. So one of the things, and we're going to talk about curriculum in a little bit, but one of the things I love about you is just the things you've had your kids involved in addition to the academic pursuits. And so tell us a little bit about their involvement in karate and music, which you would think are opposite ends of the spectrum, but to me, it just shows how fully orbed a homeschool can really be.
Yeah, we started music lessons first. In elementary school, we were pretty guarded with how many outside pursuits we did because homeschoolers can get crazy busy with all the things we want to pile on, all the extras that are fun. So we had a lot of church events already. We used to get together with families for a co-op from our church, and then we started string lessons, and because we wanted to raise up musicians for our church, people who could use that if they wanted to, be in an orchestra someday. That's fine, but we wanted just to have that skill. So I play the piano and, my boys started playing viola. Actually, my firstborn just started playing viola, and then the teacher said she saw my other son sitting there trying to mimic everything that his older brother was doing, and she goes, "Can he start too?" So they pretty much both started at once. So we had a viola and a cello, and, that really added some discipline to our lives because string players don't just get to press buttons like I do on the piano. They have to, like, get every knuckle on every part of their hand and their arm and everything just exactly right so they can press right on the right spot on the string. They don't have frets or anything like guitars do. So we had a lot of work to do to make beautiful music on these stringed instruments. And, so then fast forward to high school, we wanted some PE credits. And, I knew my boys could do beautiful things like play canon and D together, at a wedding or something,
Yeah.
but we needed to be a little bit more well-rounded. We were a little bit bookwormish and everything. So we started at this karate school, and it was a social thing too. We had friends there, and it was exercise, and we were there for 4 years. The boys really got physically fit and strong. And, so yeah, they're over here playing really sensitive music at home and at church, and then they're at the karate school yelling in the dojo and just these warrior cries. So it was fun to try to develop, just this well-rounded guys, and then they each had their own individual interests too. Like my firstborn loves languages, things like that. So he studied some biblical Greek before he went to college, and now he's minoring in Greek. And then, my younger son is interested in drones and photography and things like that, so he's working on his remote pilot's license.
Oh, how
So,
cool.
yeah, there are just lots of fun things that you can get into, so many opportunities.
It is, and you can follow their interests. Like,
Yeah.
you chose the strings for them, but they obviously had to have some interest in it themselves to keep moving forward. And the karate, I love some of the lessons you have shared with me that your boys learned from karate. And I think I mentioned they just got their black belts, which is really exciting. Congratulations. I know they were thrilled. So tell us the lessons you learned as you were getting started in karate.
Yeah. So, whenever they were beginner belts, they were told as part of the class, they had to do push-ups and different things, and they would say, "Okay, everyone give me 15 push-ups," and you should see the form on these kids. Their rear ends are up in the air and they're just terrible. But, it was really, really hard for them to crank out 15 push-ups because they'd never done it before. Um, but just like, we had to be disciplined somewhat in school and then really disciplined with the string instruments, we carried that over now into this physical realm. And so they just had to keep working at it and just be faithful, not worrying so much about the outcome. You're pursuing a goal, but they're just doing the best they can every day. And at the test, they were just required to do 100 push ups at the end of the test, and 100 sit ups, and 100 squats, and all these things after this long test. And it just it's a great illustration that I like to use with my homeschool parents because they'll come to me and they'll say, "But how do you get there? How my child is here. How do I get there? It is such a concrete example that I always pull out the push-ups, you know, and I even sometimes recommend that they start doing push-ups with their kids so that they can remind their kids, remember when you couldn't do 5 and now you can do 50? And they can see that they get physically strong. So sometimes with homeschooling, you can't always see the progress, even though it's happening. And so that's just been another concrete example for us of how growth happens. And you have to be patient. You just have to be faithful, and the growth will come if you keep working at it.
Well, that is really that is such a good word, and I love that example. It's funny because both of my sons were natural athletes. One's a musician, one's not, but they both we worked on scripture memory with them. And so it's interesting because we took our church youth group on a missions trip to West Virginia to refurbish a home that had been, affected by some type of natural disaster. And before we left, we told all the kids they had to memorize 12 verses, Philippians 2, 1 through 12. And before they could get on the van with us to go on the missions trip, they all had to say it. Well, Ty, my oldest son, had just put it off, put it off, put it off, put it off. So he spent 2 days memorizing these 12 verses. And so when they, after the missions trip, they went to this Christian wilderness camp. This is just spurring this memory of going from a missions trip to camp, this outdoor camp, and the adjustments and the things they learn in different environments. And so Ty, as this athlete, this worked on it all of his life. They had this award at camp called 3012. In 2 weeks, you had to do 3,000 push ups and memorize 12 Bible verses. Well, the 3,000 push ups for Ty was nothing. He figured out how many he had to do a day, and he probably could have done twice that. But the Bible memory would have been much more difficult for him in that period of time with all the other demands of this outdoor camp. Well, it just happened that the 12 verses they had chosen that year were the 12 verses Ty had just memorized. And so he went into Chief Chuck and he said, I know these verses. And he just said, I wanted to say them, Mom, while they were fresh in my mind. And Chief Chuck said, Did somebody tell you, Ty, what these verses were? And he said, Well, the Holy Spirit did, I guess. And, but it's really fun to see them grow in areas that aren't as native to them as other areas, and then see their strengths strengthened. And, I think that's one of the things I love about homeschooling in high school is they have these breadth of experience that I'm just not sure I had. I did a ton of stuff in high school, but not the great diversity.
Yeah, and I find that my boys have they passed me in different ways along and each one in different areas, but that's okay because it's not like I have to be smarter than you. I need to be know everything. That's not what it's about. It's about this is a lifestyle of learning.
Yeah,
And
that's
we're
right.
all moving in this direction. So actually, sometimes they'll teach me things, sometimes I'm teaching them things. And it's so great because, they're both taller than I am now. And, just it's great to do life together.
It really is, and I love what you're saying because, there are definitely ways my all of my kids at some point in their high school career, sometimes earlier than that, surpassed me in their understanding of things, and yet we're not called to know everything. We're called to have the resources and know how to point them in the right direction. One of our friends was who homeschooled. We started a co-op together, at one point. She homeschooled her son all the way through, and then when he got into high school, he just realized he loved science, and the mom didn't, and she said, "I don't know what to do for you." And he said, "Give me the books, Mom, just give me the books." So he took his science books written from a, biblical perspective, and he studied for 4 years on his own, and now he's a nuclear physicist.
Wow.
And so, it's amazing when a child has a mom and dad who are really supporting their dreams. You don't have to understand everything. You just give them the platform for learning in a lot of
Yeah.
different ways.
And I think too, one of the biggest work that moms of elementary school kids can do is teaching their children's hearts, their attitudes, and, you know, I went to school and I sat through it. And I got good grades. I knew how to run the system or work the
Yeah, yeah,
system, but,
yes, yes.
um or when I practiced piano, my mom would turn the timer on and I would do my time, but that is different than engaging. And so as
Yes.
homeschool moms, we can really exhort our children to engage and to uh, I mean, and it's not just all discipline. Like I I I know sometimes I sound like I'm the very type A discipline mom, and but my kids love learning. They love it. And but but we worked on that attitude. We cultivated that attitude together. And we did it I read aloud to my boys even when they were in high school, and we would read all the time, and we would talk about, "Oh, did you know?" And just whatever it was, we weren't just doing our time in school. So if you've got little ones, this is the hardest work. You are putting in a lot of work whenever they're young. But it's not just about the math and grammar. I mean, math and grammar are really important because these are tools God gave us to have dominion and they help us do our jobs well on this earth. But if you can get to the heart behind it, if you can get them to engage and to love the right things, then you're going to have it made. High school is much easier because they know how to engage themselves. They don't need you to make them do something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have reminded me of so many stories today while we've been talking, Jennifer. We had a friend who was the headmaster at the large Christian school here in Columbia, and he also homeschooled. And he wrote this article for their school newsletter at one point, and he used homeschooling as an example. And he said, we have a 7.5 or 8 hour day. And then he started whittling down the day, like the time going to and from class, or standing in line, or eating lunch, or recess, which I think is really important. I don't think that's an add in. And so then he would talk about the time you spend in learning, and he got to the very heart of it, and he said, "But what we want is engaged learning." And that's probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of the school day, where you look in your child's eyes and you know they are engaging with you and engaging with the material. And he said, "That's where the magic happens." And so I love the the way that you use the word engaged, because when we are one-on-one or one-on-two, or like our dear friend who's a consultant one-on-10, when, it just but it's so different because you can really aim for that engagement, and it doesn't take you 8 hours to do it.
Right.
And so you can engage in your schoolwork. You can engage when they're working on things like karate and strings. And I think that's so much of the heart of homeschooling and the heart issues like you were talking about. Thank you for joining Jennifer and me today for part one of this two-part episode. You can find Jennifer at her website, homeschoolhelp.com/Jennifer-Lont. You can also find it in the show notes. As always, you can find me at zantyler.com and on social media. Thanks so much for joining us, and may God continue to bless you and your family in your homeschool journey. Bye.